All right, and we should be live. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Hey.
We are back. We missed last week because of some tech issues. So, I, being the good host I am, did the only reasonable thing and went on the dark web and traded numerous bitcoins for some very dark software that allowed me to go on the internet, download a special OBS patch in beta testing that instead of recording audio off of our mics, is recording audio off of the application software. And so hopefully that should solve our issues up till this point. I forgot to set up my second laptop to test, make sure everything's coming in okay. So I'll be checking that in a couple seconds. In the meantime, Andrew, how are you doing?
Doing all right. I just got a video out. Yeah, hopefully the audio stuff works better now. That'd be good. That'd be good. Yeah, I just put out a video on how my launch of Air Obscure went. Spoiler alert, pretty badly. That's okay. First game. Yeah, I think the video turned out pretty well. People might be interested in that if they are interested in making games.
All right, that's good. You're working on a new game now. Is there anything you can tell us about it?
Not a whole lot. It's gonna be a while before there's anything to reveal or a playable demo. Um, there's a lot of shuffling around that I'm hearing from your end there.
Yeah,
Just so
I've
you
muted
know.
myself. I'm just setting up
Okay.
my pop filter,
Okay. Sounds good.
my DIY pop filter.
Nice.
Uh,
Jury rigged.
yeah, it's just like a bandana over the thing. Okay.
Okay.
Our stream appears a lot darker for some reason. Well,
Weird.
actually, that might just be my laptop's on like a nightlight mode or something. Yeah, I'm coming in a lot louder now. I wonder if it is. Let me check the stream on my phone because I'm not noticing a lot of blues, and that might be why. But yeah, we're back. Hopefully this lasts and we won't have any more issues. We did our Prime review. That should be coming out sometime within this or next week. I gotta say, I have newfound respect for video editors. Hold on. Can you say something? I'm not sure if I can hear you or not.
Okay. Testing.
Yeah, no, I can. I might be a bit loud. Yeah, that looks a lot better. I was seeing some red.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a lot more work than I thought it was going in. And
Absolutely.
you've watched. I've been posting screen caps of all the progress I've made every day, and slowly but surely. I've shown you some of the jokes too. Lots of jokes. In fact, I see you took one of my jokes for the video.
I did. Classic. I love it.
Now everyone's going to think that I stole it from you.
Oh, no.
It's going to be like Luai and Yai all over again.
No. Should I put it? I'll put a disclaimer. Just
Yeah.
put a big watermark over the video saying the intro belongs to Max.
This meme that has been used hundreds of thousands of times before.
Yeah. Is in fact, I'm legally obliged to say it is property of Max.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at my yeah, I think I just have like a night light mode on my computer. So everything's looking fine. But
okay.
Here we are. I don't think this is working on my website because we threw this all together in a few minutes. Well, that's not true. I did most of the setup earlier today. But everything's working, except for chat. I think chat might be working, it might not. I don't know. We don't have many chatters anyway, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. We got a strike. We didn't get a strike. We got a copy ID claim on the last video. And I had to download it. I didn't have to, but I figured it was less work to just download it, add an overlay, and upload it again. So I've upped the opacity or / transparency of the Jinx overlay for this episode. And it might stay like this. We might put it down. It was at 50 before. It's at 60 now. We might move it down to 55. But it's just less work on our end. So I did this.
Sounds good.
That being said, before we can watch Arcane today, there is something we have to talk about. We haven't really discussed this, but generally, as a general rule of thumbs, and this may just be because of the time I grew up in, but we on this channel we have a general rule against allowing doxers on, and I feel like it would be remiss if we didn't address the Riot doxing scandal before talking about their show.
See, I'm not in the loop. It's
Okay.
like I see, I saw headlines. I'm like, I've got other things on the go than to look at headlines and things. But yeah, is it really bad?
Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, Andrew, but did you know you are actually a rapist?
I am. Oh my gosh.
I don't know if you remember this, but it's true. I remember specifically both you and Steven have at times sexually assaulted me in Halo, the video game, by teabagging my dead corpse, which apparently now is on the exact same plane as literal rape.
My goodness.
I don't know how this happened. I don't know why this happened.
Did that happen? Is that related to the Riot issue? I thought there.
Well,
I don't
so
know if you
yes.
can do that in League.
Well,
I
not
don't
in
know.
League,
I
but
guess
in
you can. I don't
Valorant,
know.
which is their you can in Valorant, which is one of their other games. I think it's based
Okay.
on League, but it's like a first-person shooter.
Sure.
I don't know why. On there we let's do that. Okay. My output gain was a little. Should fix some of the noise issues. I keep seeing myself go red, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? That should fix it. No, but so basically the story is that there was. Yeah, okay. So basically, the story is there was a competition, and one of the teammates, one of the players, teabagged one of their teammates after they got shot. So they were banned from the competition.
Oh.
This isn't the scandal. Then the host of the competition, after banning them, the player told him that, well, this was my teammate. Isn't there any consideration for that? He's like, no, you're a piece of shit. There's no place for this in professional sports. He says after apparently drinking and hitting tons of bongs on the stream, talking about professionalism. And he goes into this entire diatribe about how this is inappropriate behavior and whatnot. This isn't actually the scandalous part yet. So then they release a statement about where they basically slander the guys who they banned, saying that making up a bunch of stuff about how they weren't banned for that they were banned for inciting a hate mob against them. And the evidence of the hate mob against them was them complaining about being banned. But this isn't the scandalous part yet. Then two completely unrelated, or I don't know how unrelated, but two other gamers, professional Valorant players, make a comment about how dumb this fucking is and how this is nothing like sexual assault. So then Riot bans them and doxes them
my goodness.
And everyone who's like a reasonable person on the internet is just watching, like, what the fuck are you doing?
Like, have they had support?
Like you mean the people who got
No,
banned?
like, I mean Riot. Like, have people? Because there's always crazy people that are like, we need to be even worse with our punishment.
I'm sure. I haven't seen any like big names out there defending it, but like I remember there were people out there defending the Will Smith slap. So there's started people everywhere. So I will point out that I noticed most of the people defending the Will Smith slap were women.
Interesting.
You know, that makes sense to me. It makes sense that the women typically are not the ones who are engaging in the violence, have a more a less what would be the word I'm looking for? A more lackadaisical view on the subject. But yeah, I think I'm still a little quieter than you, but no, I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, so Riot, be better. And until Riot, oh fucking like, Jesus, I'm not even sure. First, they should unban them. That's what they should do first. They should unban and apologize. Maybe they have. I haven't kept up with the news story, but that's what they should do first, and then promise to be better. Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Now technically, now to be fair to us, I don't think anyone involved in that was involved in Arcane. I think these were entirely separate people, and also I believe they were entirely separate parts of the company. So
That's a tricky thing. Like, how, to what extent do you? It's like I absolutely hate Netflix, and I didn't have Netflix for a while. But I really, really wanted to watch Arcane. I want to show people, and so I got it. Um, so that was something, like, I wondered, like, how much willingness can there be given to company when they do something, in whatever way, evil or just dumb or something. Like, yeah, I do wonder about that, because there's a lot of things that um there's a lot of companies that do things that their products are useful or good in the case of Arcane, but they themselves do great things in the case of this, thing with Riot, or in a lot of cases a lot of worse things. And I often think, like, man, what do I do? I don't know. What do you think, Max? It
yeah,
depends
there's
on how involved they are.
I can't remember who the guy is, but there's a joke I like about separating art from the artist. And he was making this joke about how people say they can't do that. And his response is, of course you can. You do it every time you buy a fucking iPhone or Nikes. So
It's true.
I've maintained generally I think there's there's a difference between consuming and promoting. So for example, I might I think it might be a bit of a different question to for example, read Mein Kampf. I think it might be different than if Hitler came back and then we put him on the show and asked him uncritically to spread his ideas. I think those two might be different.
Hmm.
Doxing, I've always made, because this is a pretty long history on the internet, that people who dox become sort of persona non gratis and get sort of ostracized from the community for at least a while. And generally it's because
That's fair. I mean, you should never you should never dog someone.
so I I maintain the position that you should never dox, but I maintain that as more of a convenience. There exists like incredibly rare instances where doxing would be justified, like the Sato Zoo
It's
files.
true.
Probably a good thing they were doxed. But that event is going to be so rare that it's better to just have the blanket rule, so that people aren't trying to like find these loopholes to, well, actually it's okay because of all these
Yeah,
shenanigans.
yeah, for sure. And that's annoying too. It's like, no, like you don't need to say, well, maybe sometimes you do, but like exceptions to rules, people like to bring that up as like, well, then the rule doesn't make sense. Like, no, it does. It just rules have exceptions because you have to say all sorts of details if you know, yeah, it makes sense.
Like I mentioned the Sato Zoo files, but I think that's like the one instance in the entire time I've been online where I was okay with the dogs. And those are people I would unironically be okay with assassinating. So that's kind of the bar. Once we're talking about assassination as a legitimate method, okay, maybe we can bring it down to doxing. But generally speaking, there's almost there is never going to be instance in your life where you're going to need to dox.
Probably not.
Yeah, but yeah, I felt like we probably should address it before watching the show because of how serious we take those types of things. Uh, we're coming. That's right. We're coming out strongly against doxing. Uh, as well, while we're at it, we're going to come out against all the bad things.
All of the bad things.
Here,
All
here,
of them.
here at the Max Gang show, we are against all bad things and for all good things.
I'm a strong promoter of good things and disagreeer of bad things.
Right, and that's why everyone who disagrees with us about anything is evil.
Of course,
Obviously,
because we only like good things and we
right.
only dislike bad things.
Yeah, life is so much simpler when we just are for all the good things and against all the bad things. Uh, but yeah, before we start, we have Primer coming out in a bit. We have the next movie, and I wanted to do Akira because uh, I don't know how much you know about Akira, Andrew. Do you know anything about
Well,
Akira?
I know exactly zero about it.
There's a YouTube channel I like called iPatch Wolf, and he has a great line that I think does a good job explaining how important Akira is. And the line is, first there was everything else, and then there was Akira,
Oh,
which
yeah,
make
I've seen Life Patch Wolf.
oh, okay. He did a video on Akira, and that is a pretty good. I think that's a pretty good line to sum up Akira. And I thought it would be a great one to start with because Akira is so influential that
Oh, I remember what I saw him from. I saw his Garfield video. I apparently saw his martial arts video. And I recently saw his influencer video.
yeah. But I thought Akira would be a good one to start with because it is so influential. Like there are tons of ideas and scenes that are just copied out of it into new anime because of how well made and how important that was. Like the Soul 740 is one of the coolest fucking things in any movie ever. And so I thought it might be nice to do that one first. So when like we watch something, if we ever watch something like Invincible, and they pull out their Soul 740, it's like, oh, I know, I can trace that back, right? And you can trace, like, you can go from Akira to Dead Leaves to Redline, and you can follow like the influences all the way through. Unfortunately, YouTube isn't the place it was back in 2010. And turns
Oh,
out that the Akira that was on here in 2010 wasn't as legal as as it could have been. You can still watch if you really want to. You can watch a French subbed version. I think is still on, but no, we're not starting with Akira, unfortunately. Akira. The only reason This is why we got this is why we got the 4K HD TV, was to watch Akira, because it came out with a 4K release. But we're not going to start with Akira this time. So I thought, if we're not starting with Akira, and we're going to start with animation, which studio should be the one we start with? And the answer was obvious.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Really? Want to take a guess at it?
Oh no. I'll retroactively tell you if I was right or not.
Okay, we're starting with Studio Ghibli.
I was right.
The Walt Disney of Japan. Because
It was literally just because my ape brain heard studio and it said, "Oh, Studio Ghibli has studio in the name."
if there's one studio from Japan people know about, good shot, it's Ghibli. Ghibli is one of the most important and one of the most famous of all the studios. But yeah, so as well, I think Studio Ghibli has made a deal with Netflix, and all their stuff is on there, and you still have it for a bit. So I figured we start with a movie from there, and then I wanted to think about which one I wanted to start with, because pretty much everything from Studio Ghibli is an absolute banger.
I've seen Mononoke and Howl's Moving Castle.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because Howl's was Howl's my favorite one from them. Princess Mononoke is pretty close too.
I like Howl. I didn't like Mononoke. I recognize there's clearly great value in this, but it just I don't know exactly why, but it just didn't work for me for some reason. Obviously it's very, very different.
Yeah. Yeah, Howl, you may recognize that it had some influences on my novella. Right, the whole plot point of how Howl stops feeling the pain of war. I don't want to spoil either it or the novella, so I won't say much more. But we'll talk about it after the show then, because you've watched and read both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Howl was going to be one of the ones I suggested, but if you've already seen that, I figure if you've seen Howl and Mononoke, the other really, really big classic would be Spirited Away. Have you seen that one?
I haven't, no.
Okay, so then the two that might be interesting to do would be either Spirited Away, which many people consider to be the best, his best work, or we could do The Wind Rises, I think is the name of it, which is interesting because the movie itself appears on a lot of people. It's a very popular movie. It appears when people do Ghibli lists. I read through a bunch of tier lists to see what other people were thinking, and it regularly shows up at one of the top spots, which I found odd because it's I think my least favorite of his movies. So I thought it might be. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say I'd definitely be down to check it out.
So I thought it might be interesting to do either Spirited Away, which is I would put in my top 3, or it might be interesting to do The Wind Rises, because I think it's his weakest work, and Andrew might be one of the people who thinks it's his strongest work, and there might be some disagreement to work with there. I'm fine with either one. Whichever. What do you think, Andrew?
I don't know enough to be able to say if it's the strongest or the weakest, just because I only know 2 of them. But in any case, I'd be down to watch it. I'd probably be leaning towards the one that's probably considered Spirited Away, I think.
All right, let's do that one then.
Because yeah, I haven't seen it. I heard it's good. I'd rather watch good content rather than less good content. So yeah.
And also we're sticking to films for at least the time being. Because I thought about Fooly Cooly is still legally available on YouTube. They released like all, I think it's 6 episodes, and that one might be super interesting to talk about. It's very symbol heavy, and it's
Interesting.
very strange. It's also very funny. So actually, I'll tell you the background for this is this would have been this is before Trigger Gynex. Basically, we're doing wanted to test out some of their tech and do a big tech demo. So they did all the tech stuff they wanted to do, and then formed a script around it, and that's why it's so short. But what makes it so visually unique and so interesting, because they're stringing all these tech demo stuff together into this plot that is very, very strange. But it's got a lot of style and a lot of character, and it's only 6 episodes, which is pretty short. That's a quarter of a season. And then I also was thinking about doing the Made in Abyss. Made in Abyss has shortened their seasons into 2 movies, so there's 3 Made in Abyss movies. So we could do those, but those are a topic for another time. We're here to discuss a show that you may be familiar with, Andrew. Have you heard of Arcane?
Is that like magic or something?
Yep, yeah, it's the Magic the Gathering show.
That's like a skill. It's like a skill in D&D, right? Arcana check.
Quick, roll for Arcana.
Um.
Roll for length.
I rolled Jinx. Not one.
Okay, it's been a few days. It's been a couple weeks since we were here last. You want to summarize what happened last time we watched?
So this is episode 4, right?
Yes.
So we see the new era. We learn all about Professor shoot. Oh gosh, what's his name?
Stanwick.
Yeah, Stanwick Fiddly. We see how Jace has earned a lot of good favor. Him and Victor have been working hard.
And the attack.
Caitlin's kind of yes. Oh, and that. Oh, I love that stuff. I love it. We see what people have been up to. We said it's Echo already, so we can just do that. We see what Echo's been up to. We see what these cool people and cool firelights. I love them so much. they're just so cool, you know.
Marcus gets a promotion. Caitlin has some difficulty with the crew, and we get to see some of Silco and Jinx, which was the last thing that we saw.
Setting up a lot of in a way, it's setting things up, but it's also continuing things.
Yeah. Whenever I see Jinx and Silco, I think of that scene from Community, where Jeff is talking about how, sometimes there's stuff we don't like to do, and so we make Annie do it. And then there's sometimes that stuff that Britta doesn't like to do, so we have Annie do it. What's it called when you fill in for each other's weaknesses? And the one girl leans over and says, codependency. Which is a funny joke if you know what codependency is. It's where you have it's like that super toxic relationship where both people need each other. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, okay. I think so. I didn't. Oh, I see. Okay, so it's like basically both like needy, I guess.
Yeah, they're both needy, crazy people. So like,
see.
The girl.
I didn't know that that's what codependency meant. I thought it was just mutual dependency. I guess
You're not supposed to be codependent. Codependency is bad.
Interesting.
Right, it's when both people follow each other to their works to make sure they're not talking to people of the opposite gender. Right? And Jeff is like, no, that's not the word I'm looking for. Synergy. We rely on them to do the things we, or he gives something, and He literally describes codependency,
Oh.
and he's like synergy. That's it. It's a funny joke. It's a funny joke, and Jinx, and of course Jinx and Silco are of course codependent. Jinx needs Silco for her validation as a person. Silco has to, because up until this point she's always reaching out trying to get Vi to take her to be part of the group, and now Silco represents that sense of belonging for her. And Silco is might be more is equally dependent on Jinx, maybe even more so, because she's the only sense of family he has left. But yeah, so I always think of the codependency thing. All right, but right, I'm ready to go. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, just about.
Right. I think we've started a bit further back. I'm gonna.
Yeah, I do think we ended up seeing this part. So
Yeah.
Silco was able to essentially.
Just I got fixing it.
Put it.
Oh, there we go.
Right.
No, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this one. Sorry, what did you want to say?
Oh, nothing. Just how we saw that we talked about how the Silco was kind of saying he's kind of like like he went from telling Savika like shut up about Jinx, like I'm gonna blame this on you. Then now that he's talking to Jinx, he's able to kind of say like, oh, like go back to your, excuse me, to your gadgetry, and like kind of like.
Yeah. I mean, for all I'm not saying he's the greatest dad who ever lived, but he's trying. I don't know why subtitles are on. I did not put those on. Or subtitles off. There you go. But yeah, he's like focused on your gadgetry. He cares and he's trying to help her out and provide her. She's obviously going a bit crazy. Here's how we can channel that craziness into something useful and helpful. I'm just saying, her gadgetry has gotten a lot better since hanging with Silco.
That is true.
Right, and I think this is our first hints at this point that Silco. Well, I guess it can be taken two ways. One, it can be taken as Silco genuinely caring for her, and two, it can be taken as Silco trying to get her to be better to meet his own ends. But I think at this point, her gadgetry is kind of good enough that it wouldn't really matter to Silco unless he was genuinely trying to do what was best for her. And while he may not have he may be in a situation and the kind of person who can't always do what is 100% best for her. I think he's putting in the effort, and this is our first glimpse of that. Agree? Disagree?
I will agree that he's doing his best. He's still very much not a good guy. I am very gonna be firmly standing by that Silco is not in any way a good man. He's a villain man.
Well, I disagree with the villain part. I wouldn't say he's a hero or a good guy.
I think he's a villain?
I don't think he's a villain. Not at this point in the story.
Really?
I would argue. So, villain, as sort of a literary construct, as a literary term, has fallen out of favor as stories have gotten less and less black and white. Well, they've always been less and less black and white, but villain usually was something for a very clear cut like superheroes and whatnot, generally we're talking about protagonists and antagonists. And I would posit that in order to be a villain, you would necessarily need to be an antagonist. And I don't think Silco can qualify as an antagonist if we consider Jinx to be our main character, or Powder Jinx. JP. Because
I don't think Jinx is the main character. I think Vi is the main character.
well, that's an interesting.
I never had the impression that Jinx was the main character.
That's interesting because I maintain that it. Yeah, no, I disagree with this. I think Powder / Jinx is the main character for a couple of reasons. One, she's the only character who meaningfully shows up in every episode. And two, the entire season is her arc, right? It's her arc going from Powder to Jinx. That's what the entire season is about. That's why the ending isn't a cliffhanger, despite everyone saying it is. Because at the end, it's her decision to become Jinx and abandon Powder. And the story is about how she gets there. Vi, on the other hand, what I'm trying to think, does she have a major character change by the end of it?
Somewhat the acceptance, but like a change in view of Piltover, I think. Not a very strong one, not like from enemies to friends or something like that, but like unwilling to work with you to will work with you to, well, actually no, I guess not, because then at the end she's like, well, this was a waste of my time. No, but then after that she works with Jace. But then again after that doesn't get anywhere and she kind of gets fed up, so I guess there's not a whole lot, but I still think that even without an arc, arguably like Steve Rogers doesn't have an arc in like one movie. Like if you take like Winter Soldier, whether one might call it a great movie or a not so great movie, I think he's a strong character. He's strongly the main character, but he doesn't really change. He comes in with certain beliefs and values, and he ends up with certain beliefs and values, and he remains the hero, the main character, protagonist, and he's pretty much all three of those things. Whereas maybe Vi isn't necessarily she's maybe more of a slightly anti-hero than a hero, and she doesn't necessarily have like a big character arc, but she's definitely the POV character, so I think at bare minimum I do think she's the protagonist. I would have thought that that Jinx is the primary antagonist, is what I would have said. Like somewhat, not necessarily Silco being the primary antagonist. He's more so Jace's antagonist. As like a foil to him. Whereas Jinx is kind of almost like the antagonist to Vi in a way, in a subtle sort of way, for a good chunk of it until the end.
I'm not
The
sure
interesting thing is that I don't know, I don't super disagree with you. I just, as my impression, that is, and I think it's kind of interesting that the show is able to be constructed in such a way that I did have that perception, and arguably it works. Maybe their case will show doesn't work as well as I think it does, but I definitely see your take, like why that would be, but yeah, go maybe that's about it for what I'll say for now.
Yeah, with respect, I think I disagree with everything you said.
Everything.
Yeah.
Well, you're wrong, and I
Well,
hate you now. I'm leaving.
listen, Andrew. I'm only for good things, and only
Oh
against
no!
bad things.
This means I'm for bad things. I'm not for good things anymore.
Yeah. I would argue actually that Victor is Jace's foil. Also Heimerdinger. I don't think Silco really functions as Jace's foil because they're not really reflections of. Well, hold on.
Yeah,
Let me.
you're. I wouldn't say foil. You're right.
I. You know. Let me think about this for a sec. Because I guess there is a sort of a foiling element in that they are both attempting to use this new, strange, untested technology for the betterment of their people. So I guess there is a foiling element. I wouldn't say antagonists though, just because they don't have any real direct interaction of any sort, or really any interaction of any kind until like Marcus dies. But as for the protagonist antagonist stuff, I have to say Jinx is the protagonist because the entire story is about her. It centers around her. It's all about her. It's her arc. Uh, Literally, it's all about her. um, I could see a similar story in which I would say that Vi is the protagonist, but it would have my issue is the axis of the story seems to be centered around Jinx and how she changes and how she adapts and who she becomes. And the struggle of deciding who she is between as we have our picture, hashtag fair use now commentary, as she has to decide between what Vi represents and what Silco represents, both generally and also how it speaks to the selves that exist within her. And because that is the central of the story, and the resolution of the question is her choosing a side, so to speak, she's the only one I can realistically give the protagonist to. Because otherwise, we would have to argue that the story is about Vi trying to save Powder from becoming Jinx, which only happens in the second and third act and isn't a part of the first act. Whereas if we look at it from the perspective the story is about Powder becoming Jinx, then all three acts are necessary and matter in that in this arc.
The through line for Vi is a little. I think it's a little bit. I think it's equally as strong at the very least because you have she takes the majority of the, I guess, lot would it be like spotlight, I guess, in the first episode, her lesson, learning from Vander, learning to be, learning to figuring out what her sister needs her to be for her, basically, like, and at that time her sister and her siblings, right, as a leader. And then she screws up, makes a big mistake, um, because of Powder's fundamental mistake. Um, and then she has to, like, her journey is, I need to, like, fix my mistake and show her that I am there for her, and that I will, and then she has that whole thing with, like, her kind of, like, I guess, like, memory of Vander kind of, like, showing up and, like, what he might say to her. um you know I think it's pretty strong.
I'm not saying her story is like weak or it's a bad story.
I mean, I think it's a pretty strong case for a protagonist right there.
What I So the way I would look at it, if we take something like the Shakespeare play, whose name we're not supposed to say,
Oh,
that that story is about the main character and how he transforms from this honorable man into this corrupt, despicable, horrible ruler, and then is killed. Every scene, and that's why it's structured in the way it is, with him at the beginning being the nobleman who speaks with the witches, and then gets
Yeah,
the prophecy, and then kills the king, and then falls into madness, and then provokes the rebellion, and then dies. Everything serves that arc.
sure, but the also doesn't begin with like Mac Duff doing his thing and being cool and like having his struggles and stuff like that. He shows up later. He shows up to take down King, right? Whereas in Arcane, like, Vi is the one with the sort of like driving. She's the driving character for the definitely for the whole first act. And the whole thing is kind of her journey, like where she's going to go from, how's she gonna, I guess, like integrate, like deal with like at the beginning she's like a hothead. She wants to go after Piltover. She's got to learn her lesson from Vander. She tries, she screws up. Then things go really bad. Um, she puts Powder in the situation, arguably, in a way. Um, she at least instigates what she would then do, I guess. Like, not instigates, but like her action leaves room for Powder to do what she does. Powder, causes the disaster, and then Vi reacts to that of like, I'm making the decision to like leave, and she's gonna come back, but then she gets arrested. Um, I always felt watching it that like Powder was a consequence of Vi not meeting her full lesson. That's the way that I've been approaching this the whole time. Of it, maybe that's where I missed a few things. Like my perspective has always been, how is Vi gonna learn about what her role with respect to Powder is supposed to be?
Give me a sec. I'm trying to synthesize your argument. I can kind of see what you're saying. If you're arguing that the entire thing is about Vi's relationship to Powder and to Jinx in a way, but um, well, I'm not sure, because if we say that it is the relationship to Powder that is the central uh, arc of Vi's character, then we don't get resolution to that at the end, because there is no answer to what her actual relationship with Jinx is at the end, right? Jinx kills Powder and goes and blows up the place, but that doesn't really sever the or end this sort of discussion of what is and is not her relationship to Vi, right? We
I
know
guess that's where where the perspective of it is a cliffhanger comes from.
right, but my counter to that would be, firstly, you could make the argument in the other direction pretty well just as easily, that it's Jinx's relationship to Vi that's at issue. And if we argue that, Jinx probably has a lot more exploration of how she interacts with other people than Vi does. That's sort of like her central character, her central conflict is, how does she relate to other people? Uh, and then I like, I think I like conceptualizing Jinx as protagonist a lot better, because if we do that, then the season makes sense as an arc, because it goes from Powder to Jinx and how she becomes goes from this one person to another person, and that leaves the entire, because it's a 3-act structure, so we should have resolution by the end of the 3rd act, and the resolution we're given is Powder's decision to become Jinx, which would imply that the central conflict was between Powder and Jinx. And then that, to me, makes more sense given who the cast of side characters are, because now we have the balanced side characters of Vi and Silco as the pieces that are tugging her apart, whereas with Vi, I guess the sort of the balancing characters would be Silco and Caitlyn on either side,
Yeah.
which comes off a lot less symmetrical.
What would be side characters from your as opposed to it being Silco and Caitlyn?
Well, it would be right, because I would say the central conflict is Jinx versus Powder, and then the symmetry on either side would be Jace, or not Jace, Silco representing qualities that are found in Jinx, or his encouragement for her to become Jinx, and then Vi would be would be the representation of trying to bring her back to Powder, and those become the two sides. And that's why I think as well, we'll talk about this in season 9, but ultimately, that's Silco's decision to break that duality is what ultimately has her makes her decide to transform into Jinx. Which probably at this point now we would be getting into spoiler territory, or be talking about stuff we'd want to talk about in episode 9.
Yeah.
But
well, I'm happy to continue. I definitely find your interpretation has a lot of weight for sure. I do think my interpretation has a lot of weight still. I'll think about it. I'll see if I can maybe articulate it better.
yeah, how about we put a pause on this until we finish episode 9, and then we'll talk about it again, and we'll go through have gone through the whole thing. Because
definitely sounds good.
Because personally, I think the strongest piece of evidence for I think the most convincing thing is that final confrontation between Silco and Jinx.
Oh, I think I know why it's important that Silco likes fish.
God damn it! Oh man, God, you tried so hard. You tried so hard, and you came in and you said it wasn't important. I was like, oh, thank God. I had a whole scene where I was going to point out when it finally became right. God damn.
Wait, but I might be wrong though. I might be wrong.
You're almost certainly right.
Okay.
Damn it.
We'll see.
I was really looking forward to now getting to point it out, and then you suddenly realizing why I've been talking about why it's so important. And now
I might be wrong. I'm not gonna spoil it. I'm not gonna tell you what I think it is.
I'm certain you are correct.
I'm gonna point it out to you. I'm gonna be like, see, Max, Silco likes fish. There it is. That's it.
Well, you know what? In case the audience hasn't figured it out, we'll keep it until then. But yeah, didn't I told everyone it's going to be important. You didn't believe me. No one believed me. Like Alex Jones on here talking about the chimeras and the interdimensional vampires and them turning the frogs gay. Well, you won't be laughing when you're all interdimensional gay chimeras.
Indeed.
But yeah, we'll save that for episode 9. In the meantime, let's see how Jace and everyone's getting on.
Yes. This is telling. Would she be proud, even with all this accomplishment?
Yeah, and we get to meet her later in the series.
I
But
freaking
this is
hate
another part of,
the
because they point out
mother.
earlier, she's the wealthiest in the city, and then the counterline is, but the poorest Merdarda, or whatever her
Yeah,
last name is.
yeah.
And once again, because I keep talking about this, and I kept talking about this in the primer review, it's this slow unfolding and unraveling of story that makes these films so compelling. Right? We keep getting hints of this backstory with her family, and it tells us things about her. We're not given quite enough information to piece the parts together. It's like if you ever do a jigsaw puzzle, and you aren't sure how they fit together, but you know this section is blue. So you take the blue pieces and you put them separate. You're like, they're there. I can't put them in yet, but I know they vaguely go in this area, and I know that's important. Also, the fact that they just have Jace's face plastered on a blimp
I know.
in the background is also kind of hilarious. But also, let's talk a little bit about colors. You know what I'm noticing a lot of in this sunset? A lot of yellows, a lot of golds,
Yeah.
which juxtaposes because we just had like these greens and these darks from Silco's lair.
Oh yeah. Okay, I see it. I see it.
Right. Colors, they're
And
very
and
important.
that's and by the way, that is literally opposite from the color wheel. It's like a blue, teal, green, and this is like a goldish, like pinkish red. It's like one for one
You know what? You know what you could
opposing.
say it is, Andrew.
Story of
Story of opposites.
dichotomies. Oh.
Dichotomy. But let's see what happens.
It's really cool.
Well, there's the gold again.
Golden Boy in the Golden City. Is Alora her like assistant basically?
Yes. Secretary assistant.
Makes sense.
Things we're too poor to have. We'll get a. Don't worry, we'll get robot ones in the future.
Oh,
Also, once again, look at the clothing. We have tons of gold. Look at her. Look at her face. She has a gold face.
oh gosh.
Like, talk about like overabundance and like exuberance.
It almost reminds me of the visuals of Cyberpunk a lot of the time.
Yeah, I would. So I've been thinking about. I thought, well, not recently, but I was having a thunk about this a little while ago because I was trying to figure out what would we would classify Disco Elysium as, because it's clearly some sort of alternative tech universe, but it's not like futurism, and it's not steampunk. So what the heck is it? And it seems like I wasn't the only one who had that question. I read through a bunch of forums and a bunch of like reviews that talked about it. And the answer that people were coming up with is something called Moderna Punk,
Oh,
which is actually, I think, a pretty good name for it and an interesting concept. It's an alternative modern, and by modern I don't mean contemporary, I mean the actual modern period, which is, I think, like around early World Wars to like Cold. Right, we sort of use modern colloquially to mean contemporary.
yeah. Well, modern means a whole lot of things. Modern technically just means like early modern, and then modern is like Enlightenment, that sort of thing.
Right? But so basically, what they're saying when they're saying Moderna Punk is an alternative history, sort of alternative tech history that takes place during that World War I, the Cold War period, but it has alternate tech. which I think which works is functional enough to work for something like Disco Elysium. Now, this film keeps getting called steampunk, and it certainly has steampunk influences, but it's not steampunk because they're not using steam.
Yeah, yeah.
So what? So what the hell is it? And so how I would tepidly describe it is maybe Victoria punk, or possibly early Moderna punk or post Victoria punk. Is there would be some word in that combination of words that would be for this, because it can't be steampunk because it doesn't use steam, but it's clearly harkening back to that era, and maybe like a little bit after, because they have cars. They're like carriages. They're carriage cars, which are also in Disco Elysium, which is Moderna punk. They have their ships and whatnot. Honestly, the show is probably closer to Moderna punk than it is to steampunk. But I think it might be a bit too, because they don't have like assault rifles. So I think it's a bit, probably be like early modern for the period. And so early Moderna punk would be my best guess. Either way, it's you don't need a label to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Never really thought it was like it has a what people associate with a steampunk sort of vibe. Like you see those like old cars, you see like the blimps and stuff, which is like a
but that
classic thing of that.
that
But
has mainly to do with the fact that steampunk is set in Victorian times. Because that's when all
yeah,
the steam was happening.
right.
And so they're taking elements that are present in steampunk, but not the defining element. Which is a little weird, because I think there are examples of like steampunk that happen in a modern or like contemporary setting, but mostly it's Victorian because that's when all the steam was happening. So I'm saying I get it. I get why people are calling it steampunk, but I would argue it's technically wrong. And here on our show, we're against wrong things and only for right things.
Yes.
And that's how you know when anyone disagrees with us. It's because they're wrong and want to argue for wrong things.
Naturally.
We've been going for a while and haven't got much further, so let's watch a bit more. Can I borrow you? Isn't that a bit possessive, Jace? Isn't that treating women like property, Jace?
Jace to Jace.
Jace, confirmed misogynist.
Is it not?
I kind of like if we go back to the previous shot where they're talking about what they're supposed to do. I'll mute it while we go through. But when they're talking about like Heimerdinger, we have this great zoom out moment, which I quite like because I think it represents sort of in the framing, right? They're talking about Heimerdinger and what they should and should not do, and Jace is having this big moral conflict, and we have them alone in this giant room with these symbols and representations of both of her family as well as the opulence and power of the city, which I think is supposed to represent like Jace. His face is everywhere. There's billboards of him all over the place. He's the golden boy. But now that but if we go to him in actuality, he feels incredibly small compared to like the weight and of the decisions he has to make and the responsibility.
Yeah,
And so
I
he
didn't
goes
catch that.
goes to her for help, and this is his. I need help because of Heimerdinger. When is it not? We have this scene where they have him made incredibly small compared to the city and the representation of all that it stands for. Right? We literally have a tiny city here, where that he's a lot bigger than. So there is the element of he's larger than life to the inhabitants of the city. But when he is faced with these actual moral dilemmas, he feels he's sort of represented as small and comparatively lacks power. Right? Do you agree? Disagree? Think it's interesting? Think it's not?
I definitely think it's interesting. Yeah, I didn't notice it initially, but I always had the vibe that like Jace isn't exactly looking for the fame. Like he kind of like humbly accepts it, at least in this episode.
As
But the
line
reality is
later,
that he's not.
You forced this on me.
Mm,
To go with what you're saying.
yeah. So I quite like that. I like that he's. I like that. Like I would very much describe Jace as exemplifying humility of leadership. Like, people think like, okay, well, humility means that you're gonna like always like be like putting yourself down and stuff. Whereas like in the case of Jace, it's very much a part of him of like if I'm and the corruption of that comes in later on, but it's like okay, well, if I'm going to be given like this job, if I'm going to be given this this honor of like the speech or whatever, I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to honor like and he still tries to honor Heimerdinger with it, like not revealing things and stuff, but yeah, I don't want to get too far ahead, but yeah, obviously the humility of him kind of gets lost for a little bit, and then I just that's why I love like him and Victor and everything that they go through.
Also, having her star above the city sort of represents the control she has.
Yes, the difference between Jace and her being very much in her element here.
Yeah. It's also partially why I think he ends up going with Heimerdinger. It's a nice speech, but it hits on the wrong things. She makes the point.
Yeah, because it's not what Jace wants. He doesn't.
Everyone wants Hex Tech for themselves. That's not why Jace wants Hex Tech. He wants it to improve the lives of everyone. His motives are entirely altruistic, whereas the motivations she's conveying to him are entirely egocentric.
Yeah.
And so this
so
is
obviously
why
he doesn't get convinced.
And I think this is one of the big reasons why, when he's up there and he's facing Heimerdinger, ends up choosing to go with not revealing it, to the detriment of his relationship with Victor. Well, Jinx looks like she's having a moment.
Yeah, like just igniting her bomb right next to her. Like, I didn't quite understand where this lair is. Like, this isn't anywhere near Silco's house, which is, I guess, or not
Once
his
again,
house, but his headquarters.
3D space.
Yeah.
But,
if she has like her own quote unquote apartment, like overlooking some massive chasm that every time she explodes down there, like doesn't shake the foundations of whatever like silo or whatever this is that she's in.
I like the idea that like she went to like House Hunters or some property manager.
Looking for
They, like,
it
bring her in.
must
It's
be
like,
explosive resistant.
and she brings them. It's like this one, very roomy. This is actually a 100% authentic old boat pillar, right? And there's a lot of room for expansion. You can build all sorts of structures in here. And Jinx is like, how deep does this go? Up a while, miles. So if I dropped explosives down here, absolutely. Drop as many as you want. And like it cuts outside. You know, the lack of floor space was concerning. But that drop?
All worth it.
Location. But no, yeah, I just that mental image is a little funny to me. But I really like how they've done this scene. I think you were talking a bit about the scene construction. If you want to cut me off here before I start talking.
I don't think so. Don't have a whole lot.
Okay, so I really like how they. I'll mute it while we talk. I hope you don't mind. You've seen it, so you know the words. But I like how they're depicting Milo, and they depict all the voices in her head. Right. First of all, very Jinx. Glow in the dark paint everywhere. There's the monkeys. It looks like she looks a bit like a crazy person scrawling on the walls. Right. So Milo, of course, is representing her negative thoughts in these scenes. Unless you're going to disagree with me here.
Milo's representing what?
Milo represents the internal, or Jinx's internal negative thoughts, whether indirectly, which I think is less likely, or directly in the form of schizophrenia, where Milo appears and vocalizes those negative thoughts. He is representing Jinx's negative thoughts about herself. Right? Do you disagree?
No, that's yeah, totally.
Okay. But yeah, and he shows up, and this is both we have the Tyler Durden style film breaks, which you'll get that if you've seen Fight Club. But also Milo looking real or spooky ate me, you know? Spooktacular.
Very spooky. Very spooky.
Yeah, and he disappears whenever she responds. And those facial expressions are, wow, fantastic. He looks straight up like a crazy person.
This very much reminded me of Smeagol in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, no, Smeagol also, because he has those multiple personalities where he talks to himself.
Yeah, like and like the cinematography, like the quick cuts between showing the face at different angles.
Yeah, it's like
They're either building intensity in the inner conflict, or Smeagol often used for switching between two different perspectives, right? Two different like personalities. In this, it's more so like her like the escalation of the of the, I guess, insanity. Like she's pretty unhinged.
Yeah, especially because the cult cuts function sort of like visual beats, and so when you have a long scene with no cuts, the scene feels longer. But if you start cutting super quickly, that sort of increases the tempo of the scene as it's happening, which sort of accelerates. It accelerates the heartbeat of the scene, so to speak, which makes it more stressful and dynamic. As well, it's incredibly difficult to have two characters that use like the same body talk to each other in like a good way. So this is why often in like anime they'll just have they'll have someone possessed and they'll use both voice actors just to make it clear. Lord of the Rings, by having like those quick cuts between when they're talking and the different facial expressions, we're able to communicate pretty well visually. I think that's a bit less what's happening here because it's Jinx, and we never really hear the voice that's talking here. We just see Milo as a representation of those voices. Then sometimes she'll say, "No, you're wrong. That thing you said is not true." But yeah, I generally agree with you to the building of suspense and why it does that. And then in every shot, right, we have the cut to boots and we have Milo in the background watching her as she's talking. Also a rocking rhino, which I just noticed. And we have who's that little guy?
Clagger, I love Clagger.
I love the visual, what they've done here, because they've made Milo, who represents all of the negative internal or inner turmoil within her, like big and life sized. Yet Clagger, who was literally the biggest of all of them, is now the smallest because he was nice to Power and he's the representation of like the more nice parts of her. So it's a clear visual.
The size is also like show of like significance, I guess. Like she's not as interested in his kindness, like, or at least it doesn't influence her as much as his as Milo's like, well,
yeah, I interpret it as the negative thoughts are bigger, more powerful, and more present. Yeah. And so Milo is bigger, whereas her sort of self-esteem / her positive view of herself is so weak and lacks prevalency. So Clagger, as a result, is small.
Yeah. Even from just like the pragmatic standpoint, like Clagger wasn't necessarily all that nice to her. He was more so neutral, like willing to be like, all right, well, I'll get her and stuff.
I mean, I don't know, I'll push back a little bit. Like he offered to go help her. That's nice. I think he told Milo to stop being so mean.
But I mean, like Vi would have obviously been a much more
right. But Vi's abandoned her.
Exactly. I was gonna say that like.
So obviously she can't have a doll here.
Yeah.
Also, you know, there's something really macabre and depressing about the only two friends she has are remakes of the two dead friends she's killed.
Yeah.
Right, and so they're just there to remind her every day. Like the ghost in Macbeth. I mean, in the God, whoops. The ghost in that play we do not name.
My gosh, it's fine.
Listen, you may not have spent years in acting in plays and in acting classes and whatnot. We don't say that word. Actors are notoriously superstitious.
Well,
if you get lightning struck on you, you know, don't be blaming me.
Well. Also, what's a regular Johnny on the spot? I was always I remember like, and like at one point she says something like Savika couldn't hit a dust bunny with a blowtorch or something. Just like, I found these like
these are like real like the dust bunny is like when you have like collections of dusts in your house.
Yeah, but just very very interesting, very unique catchphrase, not catchphrases, but well, phrases that it's just.
Johnny on the spot is like a handy person, someone who's ready to perform. Here's the Merriam-Webster. Merriam-Webster dictionary defines Johnny on the spot as a person who is on hand and ready to perform a service or response to an emergency. But yeah, these are not very common, which sort of adds, because Jinx originally is like this Harley Quinn kind of quirky, crazy girl, whereas Arcane takes that in a very dark direction. To sort of, and to be fair, Harley Quinn has a bit of a dark backstory, and is actually super depressing. Her story is actually super depressing if you analyze it for like more than 5 minutes of her being in love with an abusive boyfriend who doesn't care about her in any way, shape, or form. But I think a lot of these odd sayings were their attempt to sort of keep some of that quirkiness in the character, in a way that doesn't feel out of place or strange in the context of the story. Overall, I think it's a good job, right? It doesn't take away anything. It adds a bit of quirkiness and a bit of individuality to her, and yeah, I think it was Andrew is having an earthquake at his place. Everything is falling apart. Andrew,
So it seems.
this is why I told you not to say the name of the play. This is the retribution.
No.
But yeah. Also, I like the added touch that she's just slamming grenades together. That doesn't seem dangerous at all. Really adds to the level of unhinged she's at right now. Was there anything further you wanted to add, or should I hit play?
You can go ahead.
And I like this because they have the highlights, right? When Milo's saying the negative thing, he has the highlights. I'm gonna pause this. But as soon as, because Clagger is going to get the highlights. She's super upset. Clagger gets the highlights, right? The positive thinking part of her gets the highlights.
Oh, interesting.
And what's the next thing she says? Right, we got the real. There it is, the realization, the smile. She's put together a plan now to make everything okay. And it's going to involve a lot of explosives. Right, no longer is she concerned about how he thinks I'm weak. He thinks of me very negatively. He thinks all these bad things about me. Now that the positive, her crazy positive part has come up with a new plan. Oh no, he's going to see me differently after I do this crazy thing. How crazy is it going to be? That crazy.
Yep. Big explosion.
Yeah. Oh, how unfortunate. Looks like Victor has a cold. I'm sure this will have no... I'm sure he'll be fine after this.
Absolutely.
This is unironically a joke I've put into the C-Beast review. I'll just say that something happens, and then I'll say, there will be no further consequences. They keep setting stuff up and never... Right? But
awesome.
This is why Arcane's so good, because they keep setting things up. And then slowly revealing it, and it'll all eventually pay off. You gotta hold it like Dogecoin. That's a nice bit of characterization. We get to see Jace is sort of the face of it, but he's not like abandoning Victor. But Victor has this fear of crowds, which makes sense given that who he is. We get that scene with him as a child at the boat later on, where he's grown up, sort of segregated and apart from the rest of his peers because of his disability. It sort of makes sense why he's developed into the sort of person he's developed into. And then we immediately get Sky with that look. That one there. You all see it. You see the look. But yeah.
Like, oh, Victor.
Quick, Andrew. Tell me the symbology of this cup.
Oh my gosh, this is such a great shot. This is like, oh man. Well, where do we start? Well, so first of all, there's irony because Jace doesn't want Victor to be in his shadow, but he's basically and Victor also doesn't necessarily want.
I did notice that
exposure.
He puts the cup in front of Victor.
Yeah.
That is.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the big thing here, right? There's Victor. He's completely obscured by Jace. Um, and what's also interesting is that the little coffee drip is covering one of his eyes. Which might kind of be like, hey, Jace, don't become too similar to another guy we know who has got something kind of off with one of his eyes. Yeah, just like this idea of like,
And he does develop into a sort of Silco-like character, right? He has the scene where he goes into the underground, starts shooting up the place, right? Because Silco is very much by any means necessary. And by the end,
mm,
Jace starts talking about we need to go in there by force, do whatever it takes to stop him. Which, I'm just saying, Silco, my favorite character, tries to kill some kids, and I'm a bad guy. But your favorite character kills some kids, and suddenly he's the greatest guy in the series.
because he kills one kid and he's so shaken by it, he's like, we're not doing this anymore.
That just shows a lack of commitment. Let me tell you, Mama didn't raise no quitter. But
It's like the meme that you sent me from the video.
From Primer. Yeah, there's a.
Yeah.
Well, you'll see it when Primer comes out. But there was a great Virgin friend versus Chad friend meme, and it's. But you'll have to wait till it comes out to see it. But also, I like the idea that because this Man of Progress flag picture thing has been the representation of Jace to the public, but the picture here is now stained and dirtied with the coffee running down, which I think does represents two things. One, the sort of difference between the perceived and the real, because the coffee mug on the outside is how they are portraying Jace, but of course in real life things get messy. And then two, this event here will put a stain on his record, at least in relation to what's Medarda's first name? I forget. Mel. Because she's not going to be happy, and while everyone does cheer at the end, a lot of people come out very disappointed in this speech. Like the Piltover enforcers. Yeah, was there anything else we wanted to add about this before we move on to the speech itself?
I think that covers it.
Okay. And there's you know who. Notice the blue lights. In fact, out
Yeah.
here in the spotlight's blue, but if we go back, it looks very green. Is
Oh.
that just me? I'm
I
colorblind with greens.
so it doesn't look super green to me here, to be honest, but later, when you first said it and then you started going back, and it actually, is it here? I can't tell here if it is.
Maybe I can't see greens very well, so
It becomes pretty clear at a certain point, though.
well, there's some
Oh,
green.
there, yeah.
Yeah, so that light turns on. Yeah, the green parts are in the shadow. He comes out into the light, where it's blue. Giant blue lights, brightness. Which I thought is a bit of a nice touch. There's all his boring fans.
Mm-hmm.
Except for for him who's still mad about the laser. And then we're back with Caitlyn. And he's going to give a speech. Notice, purple and gold, colors of royalty.
Oh yeah, yep.
Then we got, of course, silver blue. Funny joke.
Jace learning that he was born with a 20 charisma score.
This also sets up for his later conversation with Mel. He talks about how it's his hammers were given to the little people that enabled them to build this whole city. And that's going to be his justification later with Hex Tech. He wants to distribute it to everyone. All those little people with the Hex Tech will be able to do wondrous things like they did with their hammers. Andrew, don't stand under the anvil. I've seen enough Looney Tunes to know what happens next.
If I stand above the anvil, then reverse gravity.
Yeah. Oh no, he has a dilemma, Andrew. What do you think he's going to choose?
I think he's gonna show everyone the Hex Tech.
Here's an honest question.
They're
First
gonna
time
be
you
like,
watched it,
cool.
which did you think he was going to do?
Oh, that. You know what? That is a good question. I think no, I'm pretty sure that I thought he would reveal it. I was like, oh, he's not.
I started off thinking.
I don't remember. It's been a bit, but
I think I started off with me thinking he was going to reveal it, but once they start cutting the Heimerdinger, and they're looking at each other, I think, oh no, he's going to keep it secret.
yeah, I wasn't sure until he actually. It's
That's
hard
part
to
of-
say exactly what I thought, but
And that's part of what makes this such a good scene, because you legitimately don't know what he's going to do, and that's where that lack of knowledge as to what happens next is what generates the suspense in the scene. Which is otherwise, because this is compared to like the rest of the show, this is not very suspenseful stakes. He's going to reveal it or not reveal it, and one of his friends are going to get mad at him. And so it's not the highest stakes, but the way they've constructed the scene and the way they drag it out increases it to be one of the more suspenseful scenes of the series. Good job. There's everything like with like the one eyebrow raised. What you going to do there, Sonny boy? Right in there, eyebrow raise. You sure you want to do that? And it's nice to know at this point he's still thinking about the laborers of the underground, or the Zonites, which will later change as the terrorism ramps up.
true. Yes.
Victor is clearly upset because despite supposedly being equal partners, his position was just ignored. Hold on a second. I think there's an
Jace jumped the
issue
gun.
here in our stream.
I'm not sure. I seem to be hearing things a little bit out of sync for some reason, but it didn't really bother me a whole lot.
Well, the stream's delayed.
Well, just to watch together, the visuals
Oh,
and the
I was
sound.
talking about like the actual stream. Mine just started loading. I was wondering if we got hit and it got taken down or something.
Oh.
But my OBS seems to be working fine. It says we're still live, so maybe it's just an issue with my my laptop.
Let me check. I'll go Twitter and go to your channel.
I've reloaded and it seems like it's going on, so I think we're
Okay.
we're good to continue.
Excellent. I see it on here.
Right, and so this is what I was saying earlier. Despite everyone clapping at the end, they're all talking about, hey, wasn't he supposed to be a genius who does stuff? What the fuck was that? So despite like the initial like applause and whatnot, clearly this hasn't gone as well as it could have. Though it might be worth noting that the people who are there at the presentation are going to be like the elites who can afford the tickets and like friends of Jace. So they who have already gotten a whole lot out of these Hexgate stuff probably are going to clap for him because he's already done a ton of stuff for them. Whereas the sort of underclass, well, I guess these are sort of middle class or working class, and then the underclass would be Zon. But the people who could still benefit from the help are less excited because they're just sitting there like, aren't we? Help, please. Like the Kevin Hart,
True.
help me. And Caitlyn has
Wow,
Hermione syndrome.
Yes, based Cobb. But also clearly, based Caitlyn, she may be like the like the wealthy type one among them, but she's still very much like willing to be brave and rush in and things like that. In fact, she's the first one, so
Yeah,
and it's cool. We all like I quite like this because they have their clash. It doesn't cause them any real issues. She kind of like gives them a smirk. They're they're all willing to rush into the fire here.
it shows she has a bit of a difficulty fitting in, which makes sense, right? We got to see that a bit with her and Marcus earlier. Now we're seeing it with her and the rest of the group. But at the end of the day, they're all there to do a job, and they're going to show up, and hopefully it ends well for them. Oh no, it sounds like an innocent young girl is in there, Andrew.
It's probably because it is one. Oh no, poor little girl. She said she's a helpless little girl, so she must be.
Yeah, she said she set it on fire by accident.
Yeah.
Probably graffitied that by accident too. Getting's real
Yeah,
Geng
and
in the scene.
she aged in a second by
Here comes
accident.
Jank.
Yeah. I remember the coverage on Every Frame of Pause on this was like, what in the world is going on? Like, how did she survive? Like,
Yeah,
kind
because
of
it
all
kind of
over the
looks like when
place.
the three people get blown up, she's one of those three.
Yeah, but I think it's not her, right? It's the
No,
other
it's the
lady.
people inside. I don't think this is necessarily a bad decision, though. Right? What the film is conveying when the explosion happens is sudden violence and confusion, because they've all been tricked in there, and suddenly they've realized that this is not quite as it seems, and then everything happens. So having those sort of quick discombobulating cuts, while make it a bit hard to follow, might be intentional to sort of convey the confusing destruction that is now occurring.
Well, that's all fine, but it's like at the same time, like it really does look like Caitlyn's there getting blown up.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I'm not saying it's perfect.
Well, you have to say it's terrible. I'm kidding.
0 out of 10 stars. Worst thing I've ever
0 out of 10. Not even worth watching.
Dump it. It's all. I've read some of the I've read some of the 1 out of 5 and 0 out of 5s reviews of this. Those reviews are not they're not well put together. I've seen essentially 3 criticisms. 1, there are no good guys in the show. 2, it's SJW nonsense. And 3, it's boring / not good. None of them really ever expound on what they mean by that. I think all 3 are wrong. But yeah, I mean, this scene could be better. But once again, when we're talking about practical perfection, would I have really enjoyed this scene anymore if like it was a bit more clear? If this was edited differently, is there a way it could be edited where I would have enjoyed this scene more? And I don't think there is. I think there are ways it could be better, but I don't think it would substantially improve my enjoyment of this episode or this scene. Maybe you feel differently. What do you think?
I mean, I don't have as big of an issue with even if this is a problem here, it's not that big of a deal for me because after the fact I can be like, oh, okay, so that was what was going on. Well, all right, yeah.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of problems to talk about in Arcane, so we kind of have to make some mountains out of some molehills every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Like the when Deckard grabs Vi.
yeah,
Not at all a big deal, but be a little tismy about it.
well, I got level with you, Andrews. I'm utterly confused as to who could have possibly done this.
Well, I think it was probably my top suspect is
Jace.
you. Actually, no.
It's
I'm gonna
Jace.
say you.
He sabotaged his own thing.
My goodness.
Oh, I guess we know who did it. Probably should be knocked out as soon as she's flown. Right, as soon as she takes the blast, she should probably hit the ground and be knocked out. Because she doesn't really need to see Jinx. I don't think, for the rest of the story. Well, I guess there's the scene where Vi and Caitlyn meet up with Jinx in episode 6. And that's when she puts 2 and 2 together. So I guess she kind of does need to see her. I don't know. What do you think?
It's not the well. Yeah, because if she doesn't know, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're right. She doesn't need to because she sees the gemstone later.
Oh,
So she
yeah.
would still put 2 and 2 together and say, Wait, this is the one that took the gemstone. Wait, this person is insane. This must be the one. It could have just been that. It could have been pretty easy to put together. But
Right.
given that she just sees her and knows, you could say it's a little on the convenient side.
It doesn't even necessarily need to be a conclusion. It could be a scene like she comes in, she sees a stone, and says, "Wait a second, you're Jinx," and then Vi has that line, which is like, "She's not your enemy," and that confirms it for her. So she doesn't even need to be 100% sure. Just have the suspicion, vocalize it, and then have Vi confirm it.
Yeah. Yeah, but the way it's constructed now, it is somewhat convenient. Just a little contrived, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. Must be said.
I don't know if you caught this. Did you read the words on the anvil?
I couldn't see them.
It says "Hi Vi."
Oh,
Right? Hi.
interesting.
The H is on the knifey part,
Okay.
and the V is on the boot part.
I didn't notice that. I never noticed that. Wow, interesting.
Yeah, this is actually, I think this is a callback to, in the lore, Jinx robs a bank and writes "Hi Vi," who now is like the deputy sheriff on.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But yeah, it clearly Jinx's handiwork.
So, mm,
Are you going to ask how does she know about the gemstone?
no, I'm gonna ask how does she like what the I guess what in that case why write hi bye, or is it just if you're a fan of the game and you catch it, then there you go.
Well, I'm gonna take a couple of interpretations / guesses. One, it's a reference to the game for people who play it, because even you said it's hard to notice if you're not looking. Two, a lot of these are just crazy scribbles. So part of it just may be her subconscious, like including Vi into her like subconscious tangled mess of weaves of internal thoughts, and so it just comes out subconsciously. And then three, because Vi has left and Jinx has no idea where she is, this could also be a maybe conscious, maybe subconscious attempt to reach out and find her. Because this is going to be, I guess you would assume, because I would assume that this will be big news, and they'll put like a picture of this in the paper or something, and then Vi might see it and know, oh, Jinx wants to see me, or I guess Powder wants to see me, or whatever, right? Because at this point, Powder has no idea, or JP has no idea where her sister is. Those are kind of how what reasons I would interpret them for having this here. Do you have any others, or disagree with one of the ones I have, or like one of the ones I stated?
I think it makes sense. Yeah, I'd probably. I think either way, it's interesting. Like I think it works as both. Yeah, it tells us that she's hoping maybe somewhere in there that I will see it.
And in some ways it works. Vi immediately comes back after this, and she comes back because she robbed the place. Right, that's what gets Caitlyn to go.
Oh, Marcus knows Jinx, so he's kind of holding his tongue there. Interesting.
Though notice he didn't. He pulled the Jordan Peterson. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie.
Yep, he's
No
not
one's
saying.
claimed responsibility.
Yeah, we have no idea who did this, but no one's.
I mean, he knows it's Jinx, but he's like, yeah, no one's claimed responsibility. It could, I mean, in theory, someone could have gone and done it in the exact way Jinx would have. You know who else? Who else has a strong don't lie rule? A character called Greed from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Interesting.
Actually, if
It's-
I ever do meet Jordan Peterson, that's what I want to ask him about. Because it's such an interesting rule for that character to have. Bit of a tangent, but there's this character in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood called Greed, and he's a homunculus who is the personification of greed itself. That is his personality. That's who he is, and that's all of his goals is to own literally everything and everyone. But he only has one. He's the only homunculus who has a rule, and it's one rule, and it's he never lies. It's a very interesting decision. If we ever talk about Full Metal, that's something we're going to have to talk about. But we're here to talk about Arcane, and we're already going pretty late, so. I like how he's still working on the the kids puzzle.
Yep.
Don't worry, buddy, you'll get there. For the brightest of minds. So a couple things I want to talk about. One, the characterization or how the council is talking about the underground. There's sort of an argument of, well, they have to be controlled, or they're not your preferred constituents, but they're still a part of this whatever. None of them are ever discussing why the Undercity might want to do this or what is best for them and for the Undercity. It's always what's best for Piltover, which is sort of just representative of everything that's happened to them up to this point and their entire method of governing the Undercity. But two, the dynamic between Jace and Victor is interesting here, because Victor tries to get up, Jace stops him, and then unilaterally decides that they're going to shut down all the Hex Tech stuff, after already refusing to reveal the invention, which Victor is already upset about. So we're seeing some real strains here.
One thing I don't understand, though, mechanically speaking, is why shutting down the Hex Tech would in any way. Like, why would you need to do that if someone took your Hex Gemstone? Like, wouldn't you all the more need to keep them active at that point? Like,
I assume Jace's reasoning is he doesn't want any other Hex Tech stuff getting stolen. Right? Because the gemstone alone is like a power source, but he talks about how it's difficult to use, and they spend the entire season trying to figure out how to use it. But he does have like the lasers and the gauntlets already done, and if one of those gets stolen, they can do a ton of damage with it. Right? Like Heimerdinger points out. So I'm guessing the idea is stop them from getting their hands on any more tech that could make them more dangerous. Focus on recovering what we lost.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? C stops Victor from getting up. Could also be a method to prevent the stone from getting out of Piltover as well, by shutting down the Hex Gate. That way they know that the stone is still in Piltover or Zon. They can look for it.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I'm curious what was like crossing his mind as like he and Victor were approaching the council, like as they were just like walking there, like the kind of stuff that is just like not gonna be um shown in the actual show, right? But like he had to have been like I'm curious how quick it took, like if it's another in the moment decision that he just made, or if like he was kind of thinking about it and like like I don't know, it just like it's interesting to think about. I wonder how that thought process happened.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone who's ever had a hypothetical or theoretical conversation with another, or run through a possible conversation on the show or something, knows that it never goes as well as you plan it does.
Yeah.
So maybe like he thought, well, I'll assure them all, and we'll try to figure this out, and then he's caught off guard by the weapon question, and then comes to the conclusion, okay, this is actually more serious than I thought it was offhand.
Mm.
But yeah, that's not what's going to happen.
His sister made the great meme here of you're on this council, but we don't grant you the rank of master.
Did you ever see the Meat Canyon video where he does that scene? I'm on the council. Yes. So I'm a master. No. I'm not on the council. You're on the council, but we don't grant you the rank of master. So I'm on the council. Yes. Oh, I've always wanted to be a master. Not a master. Just on the council. Don't you have to be a master to be on the council? It's a very silly episode. I'll show it to you sometime.
It's amazing. I love that stuff. And it's also interesting that this is her kind of putting someone in her mind competent in the right position that you should be in, which is probably correct. Also, her gaining from the situation.
Yeah, I think it's more to do with her making another ally on the council.
Yeah, for sure.
She's a Machiavellian.
But she wouldn't I don't think she'd put like an idiot on the council or like someone
Why not? There's already idiots on the council.
Yeah, but I doubt that she didn't put them on. She just thought like, oh, an easy vote for me.
I would doubt that an idiot would ever be in a position that Mel would want to put them on the council. Yeah. Right? An idiot's not going to come up with hex tech by virtue of who she is and who she hangs out with.
But I'm saying like she'd rather have, because I was wondering about this because I always thought
she'd rather have a competent someone who's competent and allies with her sometimes than an idiot yes man.
That's what it seems like from this. Even though Mel is very like manipulative, but she doesn't seem to prefer to just have like a just completely like pure like puppet. I don't know. I maybe that's like a change in her that I'm not really sure because she does come off as pretty manipulative.
Yeah. And I think she does genuinely care about the city. And probably a good chunk of that is the fact that Piltover offered her a home when she had none. But we'll have to see if she survives into next season how she deals with replacing council members or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. She kicks Heimerdinger off, doesn't she?
He agrees to.
Yeah. And he's pretty competent. At least compared to some of the other people.
Yeah. He's not even going to be a little bit helpful to her goals. He's completely opposed to hex tech.
Yeah, I guess you're right. So she might want someone who's competent that disagrees with her sometimes over a useful idiot, but she definitely doesn't want a smart opponent.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Gust body.
Yeah, it kind of sucks that this August body only meets once a year, or 1 month per year. She's really leaning into getting Heimerdinger to go along. And it makes sense too, right? Because he followed Heimerdinger's advice just recently and
Yep.
demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice his own work, like Stanwyck Padiddly,
Yes.
to Heimerdinger. Right? All those things are set up, and we have little setups that are paid off with little things, which has led Heimerdinger to think that this is a good idea, which will ultimately cause him to lose his seat. But we're not quite there yet.
Yeah. With goodwill, he concocts his own destruction.
Is it the song now? It's the song!
Oh gosh, this. Yeah, the Jinx isn't all too interested in a good
He's just shouting
lyrics.
at him, and she's annoying. So,
Oh yeah, no, I love this scene so much. Just like
so
just very
there's
much
one thing I want to point out that you probably haven't realized, but before we get there, notice what she has in her hands.
that's literally now I'm like, oh, now I understand. Like, cause for a long time I was like I don't know. I don't know if those are our team or her team or what they are, but yeah, now I understand.
Saw those earlier in the episode, Progress Day, they were showing it off. Now we're seeing it here. Like the liking fish, which I'm still upset you figured out. That'll be relevant later. Okay, now what I really, really like about this scene, I actually love their usage of this song so much. So
Really?
here's the background if you didn't know. This song is the original Jinx song that came from the first music
Oh,
video that that this company, I think it's Fortige, that this company made for League of Legends. This was the first
interesting.
music video, the first cinematic that featured a character from within from first cinematic period, but Jinx was the first character to ever get one. And this company went from this small studio that did this one music video to doing more of their cinematics to doing Arcane. So this is a super important piece of history. It's super relevant to Jinx because the song is about Jinx. But what I really, really love about this scene and their decision to include it here is this story obviously takes place after the music video, and therefore the song takes place after the events of Arcane. This is like the music video is her like blowing up a bunch of robots and destroying this and leveling city blocks and giant skyscrapers and stuff.
Hmm.
But the line, because Silco cuts it off mid-song, and the line he cuts off is because I'm feeling ignored.
Oh,
And I love that so much because the disappearance of Silco and her feeling alone again is what causes her transformation into Jinx in episode 9. And so we can conclude with this scene in as well that ironically the thing that's holding her back from becoming Jinx is Silco, because she still has that connection with someone and that deep care for someone and this feeling of being a part of a group and having people who care for her, that she's is able to retain onto that sort of last bit of humanity and those things that powder represents, because she's never feeling ignored because Silco comes in there and slams the music off. But once he's gone and he's not there to turn off the music, and she is alone and is ignored, she becomes Jinx. At least that's how I interpret it. What do you think? Interesting take?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, let me think real quick. Huh. Well, see, I guess my one raised eyebrow about it is like I really I want to say struggle, but like I'm not so sure about saying I don't know if I would say become I was gonna say this, but then you said like last piece of her humanity, which I agree with. She hasn't fully gone over the well. But no, because that's the thing. Like, I do think that she pretty well fully has gone over the edge. She kills people. She is completely like willing to basically just, like kill pretty liberally. Um,
So just to clarify, are you saying that at this point you would classify her as Jinx as opposed to
absolutely,
like Powder Jinx?
absolutely. Yeah, I don't follow the like powder jinx idea. I I know there's a change that happens, but she's still very much like evil. Like, thing like yes, she had like trauma and all that, but she is very much still like evil here. Like
Actually, Andrew,
what
evil
we
is considered a derogatory and offensive word. We now
oh
call it
sorry
a
sorry
villainy inclined.
yes she um but yeah, like she's not like arguably the whole discussion later on is like they realize that things are different, right? They're not like she has changed. She's not about to change. She has already changed. Things are different. Like, um, you know, it's more of like it becomes confirmed rather than like maybe in her mind like she might think like, oh, maybe I could somehow, be well. Because I don't even necessarily know if she doesn't want to work for Silco or something. Like she wants to somehow make this compatible with being with Vi. Well, I don't know. Like I'm being very scrambly here, but I guess ultimately what it boils down to is at this point she's already kind of past the brink.
So I get what you're saying and where you're coming from. I'm gonna disagree with you, but I get where you're coming from, what you're trying to say.
It's like compare it to Jace, right? Jace does make a mistake. Vic.
So I think you cut out there. You said Vic, and then I didn't hear anything after that.
Sorry, I just cut out for a second. Am I back?
Yep.
Yeah. So Victor and Jace make big mistakes, but they come back from the brink, right? And they weren't as far down that path as you, and maybe it wasn't even the same path, but like she has habitually made a routine of just trivializing life and killing people. Like I'm not sure I don't know what. Let's say it's a different story. It's it's one season. It's a happy ending. I have no idea what that final episode would look like. Like I have no idea what she would be like. I don't know. Like I don't think she could have been Powder at any point.
Okay. Well, so there is Vi's conceptualization of Powder, and there is Silco's conceptualization of Jinx, and this character never is and never becomes either of those things. Even at the end, what Jinx becomes is not what Silco envisioned as Jinx.
Yeah.
right? And this is probably a big difference between Jinx here and Jinx is so here might be where a bit of the issue's coming in. Because when I think Jinx from League of Legends, the game, the character that I'm familiar with. And this Jinx is clearly not that Jinx yet. You're right that she is violent and does violent things and doesn't seem to have a problem killing people if they're killing people. But at this point in the story, her violence serves a purpose and is in some order of furthering her goals, as opposed to the Jinx I imagine she'll become later in the series. That is, and to be fair, that she does at the end, because up until like the last episode, everyone she kills is someone who's directly in the way of her goals. Whereas by the end, the violence she's taken on is more careless in nature and is less about achieving goals as it is hurting people. So I think the character and nature of the violence is different, and that's what distinguishes Powder Jinx from Jinx. The methodology, the reasons behind what she's doing and why she does it.
Mm.
Right? Because Silco's version of Jinx isn't this sort of careless, isn't this Kali style careless destroyer of worlds. Right? This is why he sends her to work on gadgetry when she goes berserk. He sees her as he sees Jinx as more of a capable like agent.
Yeah.
Which is not what she becomes.
Yeah.
And part of that's probably due to that final speech. But we should probably save a lot of this till episode 9. But
I think 9 is gonna be a multi-part for sure.
Yeah. What I would suggest is that there are markedly and very important differences between Jinx at this point in the story and Jinx post episode 9 and then later into the game. That make these characters markedly different. I would agree that there isn't really a version. I think episode 9 sort of demonstrates why I think Vi's attempts are doomed from the start because she doesn't realize that Jinx can't be Powder, and the reason why Silco wins is because in her mind anyways, because he comes to that realization that she isn't going to be what he sees her to be, but she's going to be herself. We'll talk about that in episode 9. I don't want to spoil the interpretation for that too much. But for now, let's agree to disagree on the specific interpretation I've mentioned for the scene, and then come back to it in episode 9 if you're cool with that.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go.
Right. This whole scene is like in like a macabre way, like hilarious.
Yeah.
Like she's just there playing with her shit after murdering like 5 people. And Silco's just banging like, Jinx! Well, that's me! Good old Jinx here.
Enforcers dead.
And look at her face.
Yeah.
when she's like that nod. Look how happy she is.
Oh my gosh.
But it's an interesting setup because Silco's very clearly very angry at her.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that Jinx really, really hates. But in this scene, she's not at all bothered by it. Because she knows it's totally coherent within her ideology and sense of self that as soon as she reveals what she has, Silco will love her again.
Yes.
And so will
Like
Silco.
she has a weapon against his anger.
Right?
Progress Day. Progress Day and Zon now too.
Yeah. What's important? What I like about this scene is she turns this scene where she comes to this assumption fully based on everything she believes up of herself and of others up until this point, and comes to the conclusion that Silco will be super happy despite her doing all these horrible things.
Yep.
And then she goes for the hug, and Silco is no longer mad at her, playing into that internal ideology she has of herself and others. Right? Silco's not mad
Yeah,
anymore.
it enforces her.
Now, to be fair, he's
Enforces
not.
her beliefs, I guess.
It reinforces her beliefs, yeah. And to be fair, he's not like jumping for joy ecstatic with it, but he's giving her a hug. Also note that her braids, she uses volts.
Oh, I just noticed that.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't notice that until you pointed it out. Wow.
I just noticed it now. Every time I go through this, I notice something new.
That's awesome.
But yeah, and what is he going to do immediately after this? You need to turn this into a weapon, giving her responsibility and demonstrating that he trusts her, laying further into that ideology she's crafted in her brain.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, she is right about that. Like, being, I guess, useful to Silco is going to make him um no longer angry.
Yeah,
um,
that's the issue with her is that he's sort of taken this view of the world and mapped it onto everything.
oh, true. Yes, it's not just Silco; it's everybody.
Right. This is the issue with some of the more extreme, like some of the more extreme red pill elements. We'll talk about how all women are absolutely horrible and there are no redeeming aspects about them
Mm,
because they saw as a kid their mom or stepmom treated their dad horribly. Which hashtag not all of them. There's some who offer, are reasonable people trying to who are offering reasonable advice or whatever. But you see some of the most extremes, which I think Andrew, we can classify Jinx as an extreme sort of person.
I think Jinx is the perfect example of why we need to believe all women.
I think Jinx is the perfect example of why we should believe in communism. I don't know how yet, but don't worry, I'll find a way to work it in. As long as we start with the conclusion, we can work backwards. But no, yeah, and that's she can't envision relationships existing in any sort of other format. And that's due to her interactions with Vi, and now her interactions with Silco, which is why we start off with such a high barrier and such high difficulty for Vi to get close with Powder again. Because, well, we'll get there. But this is why Savika's sort of explanation of why Vi is there works, because it preys upon Jinx's view of relationships. But let's see how this goes.
Oh, this is.
Now, I'm just going to say, that's poor gun safety. That's a flintlock that doesn't have a safety on it, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
To be fair, she might not have powder in, but still, I wouldn't recommend twirling around your guns.
Yes, and this scene, every time I watch it, I'm just like, oh, heck, like he's well-meaning, and yeah, it just doesn't go well. It's not like a big disaster, but this is kind of I think this might be the last meaningful interaction that these two have.
Yeah, they have one more interaction where they talk at the council, but that's it.
Yeah.
First off, throwing the flowers with the rest of the flowers. Great instance of
Yeah.
showing, not telling. But I want to talk a bit about how Jace presents this idea. We're putting chemicals in Zon that are turning the friggin' frogs gay.
Well, that's Piltover's fault. Piltover's the globalist. Jace is the globalist. He made the Hexgate.
So he is the globalist.
Silco is the based capitalist.
Yeah.
Nationalist.
It's just such a small stool.
Yeah, what's the point of that?
I like about this line is because that's the exact situation Jace was in with the Hex Tech. He had this this theory about how it could all work, but no evidence. And he has that line with Victor where he says, "If we can just show them equations and prove and show them that they work," he says it'll take more than equations. We have to have proof.
Yeah.
Victor's right, and so it makes sense that he's relaying the same advice that got him to where he is to her now.
I'm sure what experiences Victor would have had before.
Well, we get some hints
stuff.
as to what he's like before, or who he worked with before.
Well, yeah, but yeah, I mean in between that and
he was also
him being the
assistant to the dean of the academy. But he lays it out a bit earlier, where he talks about no one believed in him, so he had to make his own way and demonstrate his value, and that's how he climbed up the ranks from Zon, from a cripple boy in Zon to the assistant dean of the academy. And so it's probably just a continuation of that. He's like, listen, people never believed in me until I showed them why they should. And you can't just tell them they should believe in you. You have to show them that Hex Tech works. That's how I would interpret that. And also, I want to talk about this scene a little bit, because Jace is they don't spend a whole lot. Jace is supposed to be in the games anyway. He's like this sort of very arrogant character. He's smart, but he's like I don't know, like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory, except if it was a good show. But yeah, and sort of we get hints of that, right? He signs every page and whatnot.
You're saying Jace is arrogant?
In the games he is.
In the games,
in this show less so. We get hints of that. You get hints like how he signs every page of his notebook. Victor comments on that.
Right.
And we get a little bit of it here, because he's done this in the absolute wrong order. And this is partially why she leaves. First thing he does is brag about getting a promotion after, at this point in the story, he knows she doesn't have a job, and she doesn't. And then he offers her like this cushy job that he knows she doesn't really want, and asks her to join her staff, which of course she's going to refuse. And only then does he reveal, actually, you don't have a job. This is the complete wrong order to do things in. First, you show up and you give her the unfortunate news that she's lost her job. Then you say, don't worry, or you say, I'm sorry about this, I know this sucks. Recently I got promoted and I have a job here you can do now that you don't have one. Right? And do it that way. Give her like the, got fucked over, this sucks, this is the best I can do to help you out right now. Whereas instead, he like does this, oh, I'm a counselor now, big brag moment, then offers her a job she doesn't want, and then tells her it's pity. then breaks the bad news that she's lost her job, and then says, "Yeah, well, this is the best I can do." Right? It's the wrong order to do it in. Let her know the situation she's in first. Then say, I know it sucks. I did recently become a counselor, so I have a job opening right now. If you need something, no pressure. And she probably would have been much more likely to take it. But this whole thing is structured putting himself first. I got promoted. I have a job for you. You don't have a job. Right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Which is too bad because 5 minutes ago, Jace was super, super humble, but 5 minutes into into a little bit of power, and he's already like it's already like swirling in his head of like I guess he's such a
I mean, even when he
new
was
thing
being
to him.
humble, he was being a bit arrogant in that he was making these unilateral decisions for Hex Tech, not
Yeah,
involving Victor, despite him supposed to
true,
being, half the partnership.
true.
And he even stops him from talking as well. And this is
Yeah,
a bit of a pattern because he does the same thing
mm,
when Victor wants to go after Heimerdinger. So we're getting some hints of it.
sure.
So the trait survived. It's a lot more muted now though. And maybe as the story progresses, he'll shift and change. But
Yeah,
see,
I do like where he ends up, though. I think he has a good overall arc.
the story's not over yet, Andrew. Season 2, Electric Boogaloo.
I don't know if Jace will be in it. I'm not sure if he will be.
And note how he sells that. You almost died. I want you to be safe. Like she can't do her fucking job. Or that she was unaware of the risks, or that she shouldn't be taking risks. Like he's completely undermining her
Mm,
her her desire to be an enforcer. Right? If he had come out and said, "Listen, it sucks. I'm sorry. There was nothing I could do. Here's what I can do to help you, and here's what I'm offering." She might have still said no, but she wouldn't be angry about it.
this is just soul crushing. I don't know why it always like just like a downer because it's like, man, these guys were like friends. She kind of had like it seemed maybe it was just me misperceiving it, but it seemed like when she was a kid, she kind of had a bit of like a crush on him or something.
Yeah,
Like they were definitely friends at least, and now it's like, well, like, it's just completely different lives now.
yeah. I mean, they're not like on. As far as I'm aware, they're not on bad terms in the game. And she will probably become the sheriff, replacing Marcus now that he's died. So there'll probably be a chance to sort of rebuild the more strained and damaged parts of their relationship in the next. But we'll have to see what
Well,
happens. I've maintained the smartest decision they could make for the next season was to just do a season with completely new characters in a different part of the world. Looks like they're not going to do that, which is unfortunate, but I really wish they would.
well, so far we only know for sure by Caitlyn and Jinx. That's the only confirmation, right?
Well, if they're there, it's going to be in Piltover, right?
I don't know because I legitimately don't know what they're gonna do with Piltover in the next season.
Well, I don't think Jinx canonically ever really leaves Piltover or leaves on in Piltover ever. Why would she?
No,
And
no, I know, but I just I know they're gonna do Piltover, but I don't know if it's necessarily gonna be the same characters
well,
than what happens in 9. Like,
the most important characters in the cast are already confirmed. I don't think it's too far of a stretch. Right? What I'm saying is they should have gone to Noxus and done a story with Noxus with Noxus characters. because everything pretty much by the end of the season, everything's already pretty much set up for the game. So there isn't really much they need to do there anymore.
Mm.
That's what I think anyway. But you know, they made Arcane, I didn't. So, and I'm holding, Andrew. I'm holding all my Dogecoin. Oh, I'm holding all my Arcane coin. I have faith. I have faith.
I don't know. We'll see.
At what point did you realize Vi was in Stillwater?
I knew right away because of the FAB coverage.
Oh, that's
So
true.
I knew about this before I saw the scene.
I thought going in, Silco had someone get rid of him,
Oh,
which I was a little surprised he'd do. But I thought Silco thought he might be mad at Jinx and have reason to talk, and that's why he got rid of her. Or he got rid of him. And that's only at like this part of the scene I realized it was Vi.
yeah. I do have a bit of a problem with this because
Sure,
like,
go for it.
just like the idea of like there are women's prisons, right? Like, well, obviously Vi can like handle these guys, but like, is there not such a thing? And like, are they like, if they like, I don't know, like like said it, like the implications are there. Like, what are
So
they doing?
what I would say is, so there are male and female prisons, but those are more, I believe those are more recent. Like, they didn't used to have female and male prisons. It used to be co-ed. Even during like,
Really?
yes, because this was what's her name? The female pirate. I think Bonnie Ann or whoever it was. They had a problem because they couldn't execute her because she would just keep getting pregnant.
Oh,
And they can't, because in those days, obviously they're anti-abortion, so they had to wait for her to give birth and recover. And then by the time they were getting ready to hang her again, she'd be pregnant again. And so they ended up having to move her to like a solitary confinement for like a bunch of months so she wouldn't get pregnant. And then they killed her. Which isn't too far off from like when this alternative universe is set. Like this universe has guns, but like the majority of the weapons are melee still. So it's not unsurprising that they would have co-ed prisons.
see.
It would all
I didn't I just assumed that it was always a thing.
well, because prisons as well. Prisons as a concept are kind of recent as
Yeah.
well. Because most of the time you
Yep.
just cut off a hand. We didn't, for most of human resources, we didn't have the resource to just feed a criminal for the rest of their lives, right? So we had first we had physical punishments like the cutting off of the hand and the killings and the whatnot. And then this is why trial by combat was a thing. Right? Because you had this court case where you're like, there's a 50-50 shot he did or didn't do it. And if we say he's guilty, we're going to kill him. So having him, the guy's like, yeah, okay, I'll take a trial by combat. Right? That's why that's why they took it. And then typically the person doing the trial would be another prisoner on death row. And they would come in and they would fight to the death. And if the guy who was accused won, they'd let him off. Once we started having like detective agencies and stuff, and we could prove things a lot better, and we didn't have those 50-50s anymore, we started phasing out the trial by combat. But that's originally what was intended for. Like this 50-50, and if we get it wrong, they die. Let God decide by through combat, right? But yeah, I think Victorian age is when they start segregating the prisons, because that's when you have an influx of stuff like the debtor's prison. You start having like a lot of more having a culture that focuses more heavily on purity. That's also a fun fact why you'll have streets named Ship Street in the middle of a landlocked city. Because it used to be called Shit Street. It's where they throw all their feces in the medieval period, but they renamed it to be more proper. Fun fact. But yeah, is there anything else you want to add, or should we finish this this episode off? Well, I can't hear you if you're trying to say anything.
Oh, you can't wait.
Oh,
Can
I
you hear
can
me
hear you
now?
now.
Okay.
Anything you wanted to add, or should
Yeah,
we finish off?
let's finish off. Let's go.
It was around this point I realized it was Vi.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, and yeah, just beating the wall, which is like, man, I don't care how tough you are, you're not gonna be beating that wall for too long. Cool. She's back.
Right.
What do I want to say about? Do I have anything to say about that? This sparked an interesting discussion on EFAP with Doomer. He couldn't like he had a big problem with the fact that, well, I guess that's more for next episode, but yeah, I think it's more so the next episode. The well, even actually, well, I don't remember if he had trouble with her coming down there to talk to her, or if his problem was um she releases her from prison. But if that's the case, that's next episode. But
yeah, Doomer's Bosch video was good. Media takes are kind of dog shit though. Not gonna lie.
I don't know. I liked him on this stream, but I didn't necessarily
I like
agree with
him.
a lot of his stuff.
I just don't think his media takes are very good. I
Yeah.
think
But it was interesting though, because I saw in part where he was coming from, of like the only like, well, I wonder how the well, no, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. There's not a whole lot to say about it, but there was another part of that discussion where I think Mahler mentioned like she's hitting the wall, like that's a bit overkill, which
I mean, it's a
I
real.
kind of agree, but it's not a big deal.
It is a real martial arts technique thing that some people do.
Like conditioning.
Yeah, the idea is you get if you do it, you'll create micro fractures in your knuckles, and then those will heal over. So when you do actually
Right.
hit someone, it will hurt a lot less because your knuckles will have been reinforced to deal with that sort of strain on it.
Oh, okay.
I've heard an argument that if you do
That
it
makes
a
more
lot,
sense.
it'll fuck up your wrists. But
Definitely makes sense.
we don't. Be fair to Vi, the fictional character with no feelings. We don't know what her daily routine is like. It could be, she does tons of exercises all day, and then ends the day and does a ton of shadow boxing, and then ends the day with like 10 punches to the wall.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. But yeah, it is a. So I think originally it was they used sand, which has a bit more give in it than brick walls do, which might be better for the wrists. I don't know. I don't regularly punch walls. But yeah, it makes sense. At least at this point in the story, it makes sense she'd go down there because she's trying to talk and figure some stuff out. So the person who assaulted her probably has some information. Is there anything else we wanted to talk about before we wrap up for today?
My prediction for the next episode is that Vi and Caitlyn are gonna die. Other than
Alright.
that, nothing to declare.
Well, if you want to see more of my stuff, you can head on to my website, maxgame.com. It has a link to all my social media, as well as short stories, some updates on the card game, and other stuff. If you're interested to see Andrew, his channel will be in the description. Is not currently, but it will be there. It's Andrew Gieralt Creative on YouTube. You can go there. You can also find his game, Hair Obscure, on Steam, available now for download and play. Is there anything else we should show, Andrew? We've also got a book, Dragon Slayers. You can buy it on Amazon. Anything I'm forgetting, Andrew?
That's everything. Yeah.
All right. Well, until next time then, guys. Fuck off.